All right. Well, we are live. I'm excited to chat with Patrick Harrack and talk about his chapter today. So thanks for joining us. And let me go ahead and reach out to Patrick. All right. So Patrick. It says I can't bring you on. So what does that mean? That means you need to turn your phone sideways. And you got to be on your phone, not your computer. So hopefully you could hear me and be able to do that. Super pumped for this combo because I remember when this happened, years ago with Patrick. So let's try that again. So if you could hop off, I guess, Patrick, and then hop back on or something. Rotate your phone, so like maybe X out the Facebook and everything, and then go back to your phone. And so we're going to be talking. And by the way, Patrick's story is really one that I think everyone can relate to because it's pretty simple. His story is tough times don't last, tough people do. And it's great advice for anyone who has a really anything that happens in life. But for Patrick's story was about his grandfather, who he was really close to, was really heavily involved in raising Patrick. And it's a really great story. So let's see. And let's see if we can make this work. So what I was saying is Patrick's story is something I think everyone can relate to because we all experience like a death of a grandfather, grandmother, someone in our family, and we're faced with decisions. The decisions are often tough. Of like, oh no, like do I die with them? Is really one of the questions that a lot of us ask ourselves. Like, how dare I continue to continue living my life and working hard and doing all these things while they've passed on. It's almost as that selfish of me. So we're waiting for Patrick to hop on. It says adding Patrick right now, so waiting for him to accept the request. Not sure why it's not adding. So it says no answer from the live video guest. So Patrick, if you could hear me, kind of like the previous message I sent you, you want to make sure your phone is sideways. You want to make sure you click accept. Let's click approve. Let's try this again. So it says adding, and on Patrick's end, it should say accept and connecting. But again, so all these stories and all these conversations that I'm having with these awesome authors.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick, if you could with your headphones.
Yeah, but they're Bluetooth.
You have any non-Bluetooth?
No, not for the iPhone.
Can you try to use the Bluetooth every time I'm talking? Let's see if it works. You probably but you probably do that for the Bluetooth. Uh-oh. Maybe I lost him. I'm not hearing the feedback anymore, so that's good. So I'm excited to have this combo. Like I said, it's all these conversations I'm having for real stories, real people. These conversations are really important for me because it just gives a platform for people to share their story. And these stories are people need to hear them. Can you hear me, Patrick? It looks like the connection is a little slow. If anybody's watching this, maybe any feedback. If I'm clear and you could hear me, or if it's Patrick's, that's off because it's a little slow, a little dragging on my end for him.
What about now, Mike? Can you hear me now?
You kind of sound like a robot. So it seems like the connection, maybe your Wi-Fi there is maybe a little slow. Hi Ashley. So maybe Ashley could give us feedback. Um, it seems like it's a little slow as far as your Wi-Fi or something.
It's all connected. It says I got full bars,
Okay.
like full connection.
Yep, you're good. Actually, right now, yeah, right now you sound good. You look good. It looks fine on my end. So if we could get a thumbs up from anyone who's watching, maybe if it looks good on your end, but if not, we're good. So let's go ahead and have the combo, man. So I appreciate you taking some time to chat, and I know you submitted this story. I mean, we're going back. It was SLC. I mean, probably 2016, maybe
Yeah, yeah,
2017. I
yeah. I
don't even
believe it
know
was
how many
about
years
three
ago
years
this was.
ago.
Yeah. So it's been a couple years now since you submitted the story. I remember you were sitting next to me and you typed this up, and I read it, and it was a really great story because I remember when this happened. I remember when you were working in Tampa, and I remember Matt was really counting on you, and it was a tough decision of what you made and what he made, and to support you through the process and whatnot. So for those that haven't read Patrick's story, tough times don't last, tough people do. It's a great simple. It's such a small story, like a short story, that I was able to post it in the comments on my Facebook. The content's just straight to the point, and that's what I like about it. It just kind of gets right to it. Of this was the situation, this is what happened, and this is what I learned from it. And sometimes those are some of the best stories. So, Patrick, why don't you take us through, your relationship? This was your granddad. This is your mom's dad or your dad's dad?
Mom's dad.
So his mom's dad. And did he live in Palm Beach where you were, or that area? Not Palm Beach, but like in
Palm
Palm Beach
Bay,
area where
Melbourne.
you were?
Yeah.
Melbourne.
hmm He
So
did.
tell us about the relationship. What was the relationship like with your mom's dad, granddad? As a kid growing up, up until like the point in the story. Well, what's the background there?
So yeah, I mean, my granddad had been around, for years, really ever since I was a little kid. My family's originally from Jamaica, and they had moved here. And, really when I was like 3, 4 years old, he's always been around. And, both my parents do work a lot. So, with their business. And, he was always around. He picked me up from school. He used to watch me after school. There were times even during during, high school where, I wasn't able to drive or get around, and, he'd always be there for me. So, we had a very close relationship, always, I mean, really as little as I could remember, where, anytime I needed anything, or if it was just an ear to listen to, like, he was always there.
Mm. And when so this is I mean, you have this person in your life that is reliable, someone you can count on. He's always there. He's there to support. He's there to encourage. What would you say was one of the memories that was like some that you kind of treasure, that you look back and really think about? What was his name, by the way?
His
Did you
first
call
name
him
was,
Graham?
I just called him Gramps. Yeah, his name was Huntley
Graham
Davis.
Huntley. Cool. So it's
Huntley,
dedicated to
yeah.
him. Love this. So Gramps. So when you were hanging out with Gramps, was it like, would you talk about like girls? Was it talking about sports? Was it talking about like, his life growing up, or what were some of those conversations like?
Yeah, it was, I always like to ask him, like, about him, like, growing up, because he was really, really, like, strong in his faith. And like, he was like raised in the church. And him and his wife, my grandma had passed away the year before I was born. But like, they had a church together in Jamaica. So I always used to ask him questions, about like what it was like growing up there, and like what my mom was like. And my mom's the only girl. She has like 4 or 5 brothers. So, just always asking questions about, what it was like to have that many kids, but also to have that many boys, and, just kind of like the challenges that came with it.
Sure.
It was funny to hear about some stories about when he was younger, when he was my age at the time, well, I guess, at the time. So those
And
were
how
always
and
fun
how old were you?
conversations.
So when you were really close with them, I guess during most of the like you were probably like 15, like where you probably had some of these impactful combos, probably like 15 to like 18, 15 to 19 maybe, or
Yeah,
is that about right?
yeah, exactly.
Just because the only reason why I use that age range, it's kind of like I know for many of us, 12, 11, 10, 9 years old, it's tough to like have a like an intellectual like conversation with grandma, grandpa. It's more like, hey, Gramps, thanks for the $20 for Christmas. But
Right.
that's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. So you're really close with this gentleman. He's taught you a ton. You had a lot of great combos. When he got was it a pretty abrupt thing, or he was he just sick and then he it just you knew it was going to happen, or was it like kind of out of the blue where when he ended up passing away in the story that you shared?
Yeah, it was he had always, I mean, he was getting older. He was in his 70s, like mid to late 70s, and with the heart, with like the heart condition that he had, that kind of came out of nowhere. We weren't really expecting like anything like that to happen. Like we weren't expecting like a turn for the worse like that. Um, but he had always had, like some medical issues for the last several years. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And you how old were you at this time when he got kind of diagnosed with some of these conditions?
what? So 2019, this was in 2011. So 8 year, I was 21, 22.
So 21, 22. I think many of us correlate to that. When we reach that age of like 21, 22, that means our parents are probably in the 40s or 50s, and the grandparents are probably in the 70s or 80s. So many of us experience you know a grandparent getting sick, getting a little bit older, coming towards the end of their life, and it's something that happens. But for you, you were faced with a very unique situation that many people aren't faced with. That you had a lot of responsibilities in work, and you had a lot of commitments. It was a really busy season. For those of us in Cutco, we understand like what the January program, the winter break offers us because we just experienced it, and you had a lot of responsibility. And you're young but committed to your work. Where sometimes during a winter break, a 21, 22 year old, 23-year old, they're not as committed to winter break, where like they could just leave the other job or whatever. But you were like, I'm committed to this, but I have this situation with grandpa. Talk to us about that. Like, how were you able to make these decisions? What showed up for you to be able to like be there for the family, but still be there for your priorities and responsibilities and the goals that you're working towards? Like, that's really what your story is about. Is like, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And how were you able to embody that philosophy, and where did that show up during this time frame for you?
Yeah, so I mean, going into the new year, so we were just winding down 2011. And, I was at the time, like I referenced in the story, I was the sales manager for, my mentor, Matt, back then. And, taking on that role of wanting to like, I mean, I was bullish, like I wanted to go through and I wanted to break records and, like really just be like that guy, the best sales manager he's had. So I had like these huge goals for January, and I had everything mapped out, right? Like the whole vision of what it was going to be like, how many trip winners we were going to have, and I think that year it was to like the Dominican Republic, and I just had this vision of what 2012 was going to embody. and it was just breaking records and just really creating a big name for myself. And and then it was in December, when he was hospitalized, my granddad, and then it was on Christmas Day itself. I remember, I was back home with the fam at this time, and that was the day that his life was when he was gone. And to deal with that traumatic experience, especially like seeing my mom, like I said, my grandma had passed away before I was even born, so I never really saw my mom go through such a tragic loss. So for as her youngest child and her only son, like it was really hard to kind of see like what she was going through. And that was the challenge for me, because anyone that knows me knows that I'm a big mama's boy for sure. Like I've always been there for her, and and with feeling obligated to, of course, my family, and then at the same time with my work and my business, like I felt pulled. I didn't want to let anybody down, and of course, like myself, I was not in a good spot mentally and feeling emotional. And I remember Matt at the time, he obviously was my division manager, and I reached out to him, and I knew that he had lost his granddad like a few years prior. And something that really stood out to me is when he had the funeral for his granddad, and I remember he literally flew back. I think it was in Orlando, to run like a management prep, like a leadership academy for us. And I was really taken back by that, because I was like, wow, like he could have found every reason to not show up, and obviously he could have had someone else run it, but he showed up, and he executed, and he ran a great meeting, and really served us. And I remember talking to him afterwards about it, and it was that piece of advice that he reminded me of that same day when I spoke with him. And it was, I asked myself, like, what would my granddad want? You know, would he want me to like mourn like his death and, like the loss of his life? Or, would he want me to continue to fulfill like my responsibility as a leader, to serve people? And as I thought about it, I'm like, I would ask myself the same question. And my granddad always really supported me in whatever I did, and he didn't always necessarily agree with everything I did, but he always supported me. And that was really the turning point for me. And Matt said, hey, take the time, like whatever you need. You need to be with the fam, take the time, like do what you want, do what you need, I understand. And it gave me, like, I was of course there for my family, and for a few days, and then I drove back to Tampa, and I was there for my people. And I used it instead of something to hold me back. Like I could have found every reason to not do well. I used it as fuel, to really drive me and push me forward, because something I've learned is that everybody experiences pain in life. It's just what you do with that pain is really what matters. And I was driving back and forth, between my hometown and Tampa. It's about 2.5 hours. I was there for like the viewing and of course the funeral service, but then I was back in Tampa, you know, pushing with my team. And um, you know, I used the sadness, I guess, is what I experienced, and used it to kind of form strength, turning sadness into strength. And we ended up having a great January. I mean, we broke the record for our office that January. We did like over 200,000 in sales, and that ended up leading us towards having our biggest year in Tampa that year. And I reference those things in the book, but um, I would say the lesson I learned from it is, everybody experiences some sort of tragedy at some point in their life. It's like the old quote that says that life is 10% what happens to you, and then 90% how you respond to it. So, that was kind of like the overview of what happened and how I went about it.
Yeah, it's I remember that situation with Matt. I do remember that, and I remember being at that meeting as well and feeling exactly what you felt. And I just want to acknowledge you for the courage, because that's essentially what it took, is courage to have the conversation with your mom, who was mourning at the time, and saying, "Hey, mom, like I want to be here for you, but I also want to be here for like my business and my people, and I'm going to make it work." How did that conversation unfold?
My mom has always been like a big supporter of me and what I do. Um, and I explained to her that I told her kind of very similar to what you said. I said, "Hey, I'm here. Like I'm here for you. I want to be here. I want to help with whatever I can. To obviously be there for her and the family, and of course, to pay my respects. And um, I've learned that it's not healthy to keep, to bottle up emotions. And as much as I, kind of wanted to brush them off and, like, kind of brush them under the, like under the rug, so to say, it was healthy for me to, my mom even reminded me of this. It's like, hey, it's healthy to get those emotions out and, and release those negative emotions, those sad emotions. And, so I talked to her about that, and I told her I was going to make it work. I said I would be there for everything. And, and when I was away at work, I said, I'm literally just a phone call away. So I was able to handle both. It wasn't easy. I mean, those drives that took 2.5 hours that usually felt pretty quick, felt extremely long. Driving back and forth, a couple of times throughout those 2 weeks. So, but at the end of the day, she was supportive and she understood. And, you know, I wouldn't go back and change anything.
And during this process, Patrick, were you I know being in sales, I know some people that can relate to this being in sales. Sometimes it's easy for us to project our own personal situations, our own personal circumstances, what's happening in our own personal lives, and projecting that emotion. So you use the word sadness. So it's like leveraging the sadness and using that to, empower you and motivate you to do the action. So it's like, good, you were driving back and forth, but still, when we're inspiring and influencing and teaching and motivating other people, and sometimes they come up with weak-minded excuses. They'll come up with like, "Oh, I don't feel like doing blank because," and they come up with an excuse, and you're sitting here in the back of your mind and be like, "Do you even know what I'm going through?" And sometimes we'll
Yeah.
project our own story. We'll project our own story onto them, where realistically, whatever they're going through is tough for who they are in that moment. How did you find the line, and how did you dance with that line of like not lashing out or not projecting your own lens or your own sadness or your own vulnerability or your own feelings, lower energy feelings, onto your salespeople? How did you find the composure there? Was there anything that you were feeding your mind with? Were there certain people in your life that you were talking to, or did you have a companion at the time, or like, where did you find that source of calmness and directness and peace, or whatever? If you did, where did that come from? And if you didn't, like, how did you kind of offset that feeling of sadness in the business world?
So I would say regarding like not how did I not lash out, or like have it kind of affect my people in a negative way. I would say for me it was just transparency. I was just very open with it, and I told, obviously, Matt knew, and I told my team. I said, hey guys, I apologize ahead of time for not being able to be there fully, like, if I was there 100% for the entire thing. And I just told them, I said, look, I'm dealing with a family death, and, it was a very unforeseen, and they understood. And I think what it does with transparency, and at least what I felt like I learned in that time and at that time and place, is a lot of times we have these little problems that we blow up to be bigger than they like actually are. And I think when people hear a story, or they, witness like an experience of something that's so much bigger than what they're going through, it's kind of eye-opening for them to be like, wow, like my problems are not that big, or here I am like feeling like I've got issues, or I've, this and this, and, having a pity party, and it's like, wow, here he is over here, like dealing with, like the loss of a loved one or whatever the case is. So, um, I would say the transparency is something that helped, so they understood.
Mhm. And
I would
that's
also,
really powerful right there. And not to interject, but I want to let everyone know that's watching, like that's super powerful, because as men, we feel that, oh no, I'm just gonna handle everything. I'm just gonna like keep it to myself. I'm just gonna like put on my cape and carry everyone on my back and like handle it all. And what Patrick's saying, he's like, listen, I'm just gonna be crystal clear and upfront, transparent. You know, I'm dealing with some stuff. I'm gonna do my best. It might not be 100% for what I'm at when I'm at my best, but it's going to be my best in this moment right now with what I'm capable of giving you. And I love that. I mean, that's so rich. It's so true, because people respect you even more. They want to support you even more. They want to fight with you even more, like fight for you even more. They want to work even harder, because they're like, wow, okay, he's dealing with this and he's still showing up. I could too. Versus like, why is Patrick being such a jerk, man? He's like, why is he being like so standoffish, and they have no idea. So I love that being up front. Sorry, I know you're about to say something else, but that was just really rich content right there for everyone to know, especially the guys, saying like, put the sword down. You know, it's okay to put the sword down. You don't have to go in fight mode all the time. It's okay to be open and let people in of what's happening, and they're going to respect that much more.
yeah, yeah. And, you make a great point, Mike, where regardless of, yeah, men do have that, typically, like that stigma, like that reputation. But I do think it's important for everyone, to know that just being transparent with people, whether it's a significant other, or if it's like a business partner, or a loved one, or just even like the people, your coworkers that you work with, um, just being transparent allows for there not to be any, miscommunication, or by just taking things the wrong way. So what I was going to add on to was, just like how I coped with it, so to say. I mean, um, really, it was just talking to the people who like were always there for me. Like talking about it with my mom. As challenging as that was, because it's like a lot. I feel like a lot of times, I know I did, like for the first time ever, like I feared calling my mom. Like I feared like talking to her, because I knew that it was going to be like challenging, or that it was going to be an emotional conversation. And, I never look forward to, getting on the phone and like crying, or getting on the phone and being sad when I know I'm going to be sad, like when I get off. But it was healthy. It was good to be able to talk to her, and, kind of voice the emotions, and try to, from what I've learned in my like vector experiences, it's like focusing on your thoughts, and like instead of mourning, like every time I did talk to her, it was, usually about like a happy memory, something that we could like celebrate, or, rejoice about. And so she was
Yeah.
I mean, obviously she was a rock. She, like got through it, and um, And then of course, like talking to Matt a lot about it, just because I knew he could relate, and just like seeking his advice. And I think part of it is just being willing to be vulnerable, and letting people know like, hey, here's where I'm at, and like I want to be influenced, like share thoughts with me that that can help me get through this. So I would say
Mm.
that's kind of how I coped with it.
That's beautiful because you're inviting people in, and so you're inviting people in to say, I'm open to you offering me some influence. And sometimes, with challenges that we're experiencing, it's like, number one, we don't want to invite people in. And number two, we try to handle everything on our own. So I love that. But you're inviting people in to offer you some perspective. And number two is you surrounded yourself around people who could relate to what's going on, so you actually can get influence and insights from people who have experience with what you're dealing with. And then number three is you're willing to give whatever you have to people in your life that you cared about, which was mom in this case, where it's like, mom, let me give you some fun memories, let me give you some humor, let me give you some joy that maybe you are neglecting at that point, so you're able to show up. And I think that's really rich for everyone to get that's listening to this. It's like those three things that Patrick just talked about are so big, because oftentimes we just go talk to people to complain. If you're talking about like a low energy, if you're talking about a low energy, a sadness, a depression, an angst, a worry, if you're talking to someone about that and they're not qualified to help, all you're doing is complaining. And what Patrick is saying is, I talk to people who actually could offer me insights that can help me get out of this funk, versus just hearing from someone that's going to be like, oh yeah, that's hard. Actually, don't talk to me anymore because you're so negative. It's like, it's actually opposite. So what a mature approach to to handling death of a loved one. And I absolutely love that. I think that's really rich. So for those of you that are listening, so really great content, man. And I could probably speak on everyone's behalf that I'm sure Gramps is super proud of you and what you've been doing over the last, I guess 8 years now or so, 7 years, since he passed. And what you've been doing with your life and your relationships and your business and with your parents and everything that's happened. And it's really noble of you to lead his legacy, and embody this concept of tough times don't last, but tough people do. And living every day to your fullest. So that's really remarkable. And for everyone else that's watching too, someone once corrected me when I said, I lost my mom. And someone once, I said those words, and they said, do you not think about her anymore? Did you not get any lessons from her ever? I said, no, of course. I think about her all the time, and I got a lot of lessons. So then, is she really lost? So maybe her body's
Mm.
not here, but I wouldn't say lost. And so anytime someone says that they lost a family member, as long as there's some sort of lessons that are still being used or learned, or some sort of gifts that came out of it, they died. They died, but they're not lost. They still live inside of us. It's just their body's not here anymore. So yeah, they died. They passed away, but they're really not lost. You didn't lose your granddad, in my opinion, because you've taken so many gifts away from the relationship. So I would say that he died, but he's still living right and well through you and through your mom and through everyone else that he's impacted, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I
So
love
I
that.
just want to say, well, I appreciate you. Is there if someone heard your story right now or reads your story in the book, and they say, wow, I really like to, chat more with Patrick, or I'd like to, pick his brain a little bit more, or be involved in whatever he's involved in, what would be the best way for someone to get in contact with you if they wanted to, like, get some more insights from you?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, social media of any sort, um, you know, text, phone call, I mean, probably, since we're on Facebook Live, I'd probably say Facebook would probably be the easiest platform for people to reach out on. So,
Cool. Well, we appreciate your openness, your courage, and your vulnerability to share such an awesome story. And if you haven't checked it out, I posted it in the comments of a previous post, and I'll put it in the comments again of this one. It's a one pager, but it gets right to the point of the lessons that Patrick was able to learn from his grandfather. Tough times don't last, but tough people do, and how he was able to still approach his work life and his business life through challenging circumstances of having a close family member die. And really great story. Thank you again. I appreciate your time, brother, and your willingness to share such great insights with everyone that's watching. So I appreciate it, man.
yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate you, obviously doing this and, your leadership. So I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure's all mine, brother. So take care. We'll chat soon.
All right, sounds good.
And for everyone else that's still watching, I just want you to know that the real stories, real people, all the stories in the books, every single dollar of every book sale is gone to PB&J for Tampa Bay and now PB&J for USA. We use this to raise awareness for the homeless, to bring the communities together, to provide some sandwiches, provide some meals for those that are less fortunate. And we also use this platform as an opportunity to share independent single moms. We have stories of redefining life experiences, of stories of lessons learned from death. I mean, we have all these fantastic stories, overcoming physical limitations. And if you have a story, submit it. Grabtomorrow.org. You'll see there's a section there. Submit a story. We'll have more books coming out in the near future as well. So, um, keep living inspirational lives. Keep overcoming your obstacles. Keep winning and living your best life. And if you want to join the movement and helping us feed some people, you can check out our Facebook page, PB&J for Tampa Bay. And thank you so much for all that you all do, and staying in touch. And we'll chat soon. So I'll let you know when the next conversation will be. Probably next week, somewhere around this time. So have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye.